I was not expecting that much level of aggression from the vocals. Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. I am Molly, and in this video I'm going to be listening to the album Meantime by Helmet. Now so far I've only heard Helmet's debut studio album Strap It On that they released in 1990, and I loved how heavy it was. It kind of had like an industrial edge to it as well. And a lot of you were telling me I had to check out their follow-up album Meantime that they released 2 years later in 1992. So yeah, I'm just really excited to check this one out and see what I'm going to think of it. Alright, starting this album off is track 1 called In the Meantime. I absolutely love how they drew that guitar tone out so much. It had sort of a fuzziness to it, like so much reverb.
I don't suit you. I can keep without help. Never time to look in.
I love how punctuated this song is, and yet they're kind of infusing on these really drawn out things too. It's like punchy and sort of atmospheric at the same time. Now there's almost a sort of scratchy tone to the guitar going on. That was track 1, In the Meantime. A fantastic way to get this album started. It just brought such a surge of energy. It was being delivered in these kind of short, sharp bursts of energy, but then they would kind of draw that guitar tone out, and it almost had like a Deftones-esque quality about it. I loved the contrast of those two elements on that track, like this high intensity opposed with this sort of languid, like drawn out, simmering tension almost. But I'm going to move on to track 2, which is called Ironhead. See what I mean? There's so much sharpness to this. It has this very staccato style delivery.
Time to take what I know. What I did. Wear it out. Pain is in my head.
I love how the chorus opens up on this track. That percussion hits and it's almost like a wave flooding in. This is such a manic song. Just what they're doing with the percussion and everything, and these guitars too, like the tuning of them is so squeaky. That was track 2, Ironhead. I loved the ending just there. It sort of had that drawn out style yet again, and then they just kind of brought it to an end really suddenly. But the guitars on that one were tuned so uniquely. I kept hearing this really faint, almost pluckiness in the background at times from the guitar. There's almost this sort of unpolished, like industrial edge to their sound, almost a sort of squeakiness, if that makes sense. But moving on to track 3 is Give It. I love how they keep kind of stopping this song for a second. It's got this great flow going, and then they kind of just bring it to an abrupt halt.
Step ahead. Confidence.
There's almost this sort of relaxedness to this song. It has this amazing pocket that it kind of just falls into, a sort of swagger almost. I love the crashing quality that the percussion has. It's like this release of energy almost. That was track 3, Give It. I loved the tone of that at the very beginning with that heaviness that it had. And then the song kind of departed from that into this really relaxed sort of back and forth quality. It's almost like it fell into this pocket and it kind of stayed there for a little bit. And then when they introduced that guitar solo toward the end, I thought that was so cool. It's like that second guitar kind of faded in out of nowhere and then it just kind of took over the track. And it was gradually picking up intensity too as the rest of the song went on. But moving on to track 4 is Unsung. Again, there's such a sharpness to this one, like a precision to the way the instrumentals are being delivered. Every now and again, I keep hearing the bass. It has this very distinct quality to it, like this really rich tone that keeps standing out at certain points. I love how they just did that with the sound. It was like the song kind of got switched off there for a minute. That was track 4, Unsung. Those verses were so tightly controlled, like they had this really sharp precision to them. And then it was like on the chorus, they kind of let go of some of that. There was more of a release, like the percussion especially had this sort of crashing effect. And the bass on that one too was really shining through. I loved how it was tuned. It just had this really unique quality to its tone. And I don't know, my ear just kept picking up on it. I loved it. All right, up next is track 5, which is called Turned Out. I was not expecting that much level of aggression from the vocals. This song has such an aggressiveness to it. I love it. There's so much energy, not only with the vocals, but just with the delivery of the instrumentals. Again, there's so much punchiness, and then it kind of smooths out a little bit more on the chorus. Alright, it's slowly building up. I love that bass though. Such a great tone. It was like this track just climbed out of that bass solo that it fell into, and then it just gained all of this momentum. That was track 5, Turned Out. I absolutely loved the energy of that one, just so much intensity, and how that track kind of fell into that bass solo there, and it got really minimal, and then they gradually built it up, and then the guitars and everything came in. I loved that part of it, just such a great build up to that crescendo of an ending. But I'm going to continue on with track 6, which is called He Feels Bad. There's a sort of clarity to his vocal tone on this one. There's like this almost slight echoiness to it. It's like he's singing in a big open room or something.
Down to you and who bleeds who. Not you. Judge yourself again. Age is no excuse.
Again, with this abruptness, it's like they have these short, sharp bursts of instrumentals. In that sense, there's almost a sort of nu metal style to their sound, like a borderline hip-hop quality with how they keep that sharp rhythm going. much squeakiness, like an abrasive quality. That was track 6, He Feels Bad. That ending with the drums, I loved how it kind of dissipated like that, and then they just brought it to a final close. And that track was a perfect example of how Helmet blends so many styles with their music. They have this sort of loose relaxedness, but then there's some elements that to me sound very industrial, more of a heavy, sort of unpolished quality. And then they do some stuff that's completely unique to Helmet. Like, I don't really know any other bands. Like, the way they've tuned some of these instruments, I think is so fascinating. All right, up next is track 7, which is called Better.
Get it right and try to hide. So get out.
I like how when he said get out, the song kind of changed. It's like it went from that sharper sound I keep talking about into this smoother chorus.
Die. You better.
These vocals are a bit different. It's almost like they're in the background now, sort of muffled a bit.
Die. You better. Die now. Die.
That was track 7, Better. Another extremely energetic, punchy one, that's for sure. His vocal delivery was just so intense, almost like this guttural screaming that he's doing from time to time. And there was almost a sort of punk edge to that one. I don't know, at times it was vaguely reminiscent to me of something like Rage Against the Machine. It sort of had this playfulness to it and yet so much intensity at the same time, all delivered with this kind of fun back and forth with the rhythm. But up next is track 8 called You Borrowed. Yeah, his vocals have that sort of distanced quality to him on this one too. Almost like they're pushed back a little bit.
Without fear, you borrow. Speak up the good things.
This one almost has a sort of sludge aspect to it. There's just sort of this drawn out weightiness almost. I love how clear this guitar sounds. It's very pristine. That was track 8, You Borrowed. The drums there toward the end were so cool. I loved how immense they were. They had this really strong echoiness to them. And his vocals on that one were kind of different. They almost had a slightly deeper tone to them, but they were very clear and sort of smooth as well. Like less of that intensity of him screaming out. It was more restrained, and yet there was this really dark, almost sludgy aspect to the sound of it. All right, up next is track 9, which is called FBLA 2, and I know there was a track called FBLA on Strap It On, so I'm wondering if this is like a second version of the same song. We'll have to see.
Lost senses.
I love how simmering this song is. It's got all this punchiness, but there's kind of this underlying tension almost too.
Right where this thin bandit.
It sounded like some vocal distortion they used just there.
Get it right. It's what I need.
Yeah, see how they're just building it up? There's all of this tension. It's like the drums are just rolling all around my headphones. They're doing all kinds of crazy stuff. That was track 9, FBLA 2. As I remember, the original version of that song on Strap It On was a little bit more unpolished almost. It had like a kind of more rattling around quality to it, more of that industrial aspect. And this version on Meantime almost had a more polished quality to it. They smoothed it up a bit, and it had this amazing simmering tension. It was like the track was building up throughout its runtime, and then they just let loose on the drums there at the end. But I'm going to move on to the final song on Meantime, which is track 10 called Role Model. That bass, I'm gonna keep mentioning it. I just never get tired of its tone.
Take a chance. What saves?
It's like their songs have all these different levels. There's these darker, more brooding, toned down sections, and then they just build it up, and there's so much energy at times. Well, that was track 10, Role Model. That track was interesting how they were playing around with the sound volume of things. There was almost this sort of muffled quality to it with how they were pushing certain instruments and like the vocals more into the background. Everything kind of blended together, so it gave the song this sort of fuzzy, like blurry quality almost. It was really cool. Well, that concludes my reaction to Meantime, the second studio album from Helmet. This album was great. They packed such a punch in its relatively short runtime. I would say compared to their debut album Strap It On, Meantime goes in a slightly more smooth, polished direction with its sound, but they did not lose any of that awesome energy that I loved from Strap It On. I loved the opening track In the Meantime, such a great start to the record. It sort of had this drawn out ambience, but then it was interjected by all of these bursts of energy. And also track 5 turned out was a standout just with how energetic that one was. It brought such a punch to it. But this whole album was amazing from start to finish. Helmet is such a talented band, and definitely let me know in the comments if you want me to do more of their albums. I know their third studio album, Betty, has been suggested a bit as well, so I'd love to check that one out too. And yeah, as usual, thank you all so much for watching. Stay tuned, and I will see you in the next video.